Hello all. What comes to the mind when we hear the words human error? I believe they are universal and inevitable. Everyone is going to make mistakes sooner or later. We all know that more than 70% of the aviation accidents are fallouts of human error. Operator and maintainer both, of course. We all think that we are disciplined, well trained, and motivated professionals. But there where we make the cardinal mistake or miss the morale of the story. Best people often make the worst mistakes. We can see the ejection happen in Thunderbird's air show at Dallas Airfield. Thunderbirds as a team have best of the aircrew, maintainers and support staff. Why did it happen? The aircrew forget to set the altimeter to the local altitude settings and initiate the do at wrong altitude and was not able to recover the aircraft, finally leading to ejection. We are in the business of aviation, wherein the smallest of the mistakes can lead to disastrous outcomes, sometimes fatal. The sharpest crew can get affected by work pressure, sleepless nights, insufficient information. Sometimes they get influenced with the glorious history of organization, culture, best of tools at disposal and environment. The scope of the video is to introduce you to 12 common combinations which lead humans to make mistakes and preventive measures to control the said mistakes called as safety nets. The term dirty dozen was given to the most common human errors after due studies and deliberation by Federal Aviation Administration of the United States. The dirty dozen of human factors: lack of communication, failure to transmit, receive, or provide enough information to complete a task; complacency, the overconfidence from repeated experience performing a task; lack of knowledge, shortage of training, information, or ability to successfully perform; distractions, anything that draws attention away from the task at hand; lack of teamwork, failure to work together to complete a shared goal; fatigue, physical or mental exhaustion threatening work performance; lack of resources, not having enough people, equipment, documentation, time, parts, etc. Pressure, real or perceived forces demanding high level of job performance; lack of assertiveness, failure to speak up or document concerns about instructions, orders, or the actions of others; stress, a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes physical or mental tension; lack of awareness, failure to recognize the situation, understand what it is, and predict the possible outcomes; norms, expected yet unwritten rule of behavior. 9 November 91, Continental Express. 19 fatalities. The aircraft crashed as the horizontal stabilizer separated from the fuselage. The cause of the accident: incomplete job handed over by the night shift to the next. The topside screws removed for the operation were not communicated to the next shift, which only completed the fitment of the lower side screws, leading to the separation of the leading edge and getting the aircraft into nosedive, resulting in 14 fatalities. Transmitted instructions unclear or inaccessible. It is important to convey the complete information pertaining to the task being undertaken to the personnel by the officers and supervisors in form of the briefing and clear written instructions. A receiver making assumptions with respect to unclear instructions. Just consider the quoted example here. The second shift was not informed about the work undertaken by the night shift, and it was assumed that the other set of technicians that the screws on the upper side of the leading edge have been fitted. Never assume anything. Asking for the information which is not clear or referring to the documents could have saved the catastrophe. Only 30% of the message is received and understood. The reality of human nature is that only 30% of the message is received and understood, and we have to often rely on the information documented. Preventive measures to increase the clarity and communication can be implemented, such as keeping the messages short and easy to interpret, at the same time not being abrupt. Emphasize the most critical elements at the beginning and repeat at the end. The key aspects of the tasks being undertaken should be emphasized while summarizing the briefing. This is more important when the aircraft is planned for check test flight or completing the major inspections. Opportunities to ask questions. The culture of open communication and asking questions has to be fostered, and technicians should be encouraged to ask questions. Lack of communication safety nets. Use logbooks, worksheets, etc. to communicate and remove doubts. Clear information with respect to the work undertaken is to be mentioned in logbooks and should clear any ambiguity. Discuss work to be done or completed, conducting briefing and issuing clear written instructions with clear responsibilities of the team members prior undertaking the major activity. Never assume anything. Assumptions often lead to things be construed as completed, even if they are not, and often lead to disasters. Use descriptive words left, right, upper, lower, etc. while describing the details of the task undertaken to avoid ambiguities and further errors. Communication pertaining to the task at hand is also a part of task completion. So, taking the responsibility of communication is also important. Always check the work, climb up the ladder, work stand. Take pride in supervising your own job, and one is being taken over. Be vigilant. Nothing stops you from going to the colleague working on the aircraft and associating or supervising him. Don't sign unless you cross check it. Ask teammates to explain. Asking critical questions pertaining to the task being undertaken is the key to avoid errors and extract more information essential for this efficient task completion. Complacency is caused due to lack of stress. We all need some amount of stress to complete work in efficient manner. Too much or too less of the stress leads to fixation or boredom respectively. Complacency can be described as a feeling of self-satisfaction accompanied by a loss of awareness of potential dangers. With lack of resources when operating on detachment, the loadmaster when being asked for the checking the battery store status by the pilot in the haste of completion, he got out of the aircraft and walked through the propeller killing himself. The loadmaster was used to going around the aircraft during his routine maintenance tasks and has become complacent about the working environment, which is dynamic and challenging. There is inherent danger in the activities being undertaken in aviation. The personnel become habitual to the activities and start considering them to be safe. Existence of moderate stress is essentially required to ensure the efficient and safe aviation maintenance operations. Always expect to find a fault. Being vigilant and having eye for the details can be of immense help to mitigate avoidable errors. Complacency safety nets. Following written instructions, adhering to procedures which increase vigilance. Having a culture that respects following aircraft maintenance manuals, aircraft documentation, and having eye for the details is the key to prevent setting in the complacency. Avoid working from the memory. Human memory is fallible, and the importance of following the updated maintenance manuals cannot be ignored at any point in time. Teamwork and mutual cross-checking. Always check for the work being taken over and refer to the documents before starting the work. Face reality. Let's all understand that aviation is complex and consistently evolving. So we all are duty bound to adhere to the basic tenets of aviation maintenance. Physical fitness increases alertness. It's well established fact that a physically fit person has more of a situational awareness. Training to find a fault, eye for details. Fostering the culture of critical observation and thinking is important amongst the maintenance and supervisors. Lack of knowledge. Lack of knowledge is not inexperience. Aviation is complex and consistently evolving. One needs to be abreast of the technological developments, changes in procedures, and amendments in maintenance manuals. Knowledge of latest tools, change in part configuration is important for efficient maintenance. Task completion requires substantial technical training, current relevant experience, and adequate reference documents. The aircraft in picture is Boeing 747 operated by Saudi Airlines. While being taxied, the crew used engine number 1 and 4 to save fuel. Very soon, the brake accumulators lost the pressure as the hydraulic systems are powered by engine 2 and 3, and aircraft ended up in entering the drainage for monsoon waters, causing heavy damage to the nose section. Systems and procedures can change substantially and become out of date. So, we have to consistently upgrade our knowledge by continuous learning. Safety nets, lack of knowledge. Continuous professional development. The organizations can implement the continuous learning programs besides creating the culture of knowledge management. Sharing the knowledge with colleagues. Discussing the routine operations with colleagues and sharing experience definitely aids the improvement of the knowledge of individuals. Knowledge on human errors. Being aware of the fact that the accidents don't happen in isolation and they are caused by the series of lapses at various supervisory levels. Classic switches model to be understood and used to avoid lapses. Stay current, read, read, read. Use up-to-date manuals. OEMs often issue the amendments to the maintenance manuals and procedures. Using the updated instructions and spares goes without saying in aviation. Ask for the help from professional, technical representatives. In case of doubts, raise the level and ask the professional for the help. Clear the doubts, especially when undertaking the task for the first time. Training to find a fault, eye for details. We all human beings and will make mistakes. Following the written procedure is quite essential. Communicate. Let someone know when you need the help. Distraction. Anything that draws a person's attention away from the task. Our jobs and lives are full of distractions, and they have become the part of our culture. It makes us lose the concentration on the task at hand and may lead us to commit mistakes due to forgetting few steps. Distractions can be avoidable and non-avoidable. The general distractions are people, messages, phone calls, and work requests, to name a few. The aircraft maintainer was connecting the fuel line of the right engine when he was called for assistance by the fellow co-mechanic, and he hand tightened the fuel line. He forgot to complete the top tightening of the fuel line and completed the said task. Later on, during the third sortie, the aircraft right engine bursted into flames and subsequently crashed, leading to 8 fatalities. Distractions are part of our lives, as earlier stated. However, we need to accept them and find ways to cope up with them. Distraction is the number one cause of forgetting things. Humans have a tendency to think ahead. When returning to the task, we think ahead as the next steps have been completed and start working accordingly, thus forgetting important steps sometimes. We all have an urge to attend to distractions, which are unavoidable and may cause us to hurry in completing the task, thus missing the sum of the important steps. Distraction safety nets. Good workspace design. Management of environment. Designing the workspace with adequate lighting and environmental condition, with more ergonomic tools and GSEs to hinder less into physical comfort zone of maintainers. Always finish the job or unfasten the connection. The task at hand has to be completed in totality or has to be disconnected before leaving the aircraft or the section of the aircraft. Mark the incomplete work. It's utmost important to mark the incomplete work as we all tend to forget at what point we have left the work. Usage of lock wire or use torque seal. Locking wire and torque seal to be used to differentiate the completed work from incomplete one. Double inspect by another and self. Always double check the completion of your task and if required, ask another technician for the help. Supervisory and independent checks play a key role in this case. When you return to the job, always go back 3 steps. When returning to the job, start the work from 3 steps earlier to avoid missing important steps in task completion. Use detailed check sheet. Check off lists and following the maintenance procedures in totality is the key. Lack of teamwork. Aviation is a team business. We all depend on our teammates for successful completion of tasks. There has to be absolute synergy amongst the members of the team to successfully complete the tasks. Non-contributors can lead to unsafe acts. Essential skills for teamwork are leadership, communication, motivation. A leader with motivated maintainers with effective communication channels and skills can overcome the challenges posed in terms of teamwork. Lack of teamwork safety nets. A clearly defined and maintained aim. Definition of the steps and milestones in achievement of the task is essential to complete quality aircraft production in time. Each team member's roles and responsibilities. Teamwork is a chain wherein every link has to play its role. Communication messages and methods. Setting channels and protocols of communication between team members is essential. Limitations and boundaries. As the team members, we all should know about strengths and weaknesses of the team members and pitch in when required and cross-check. Emergency procedures. The team should be well aware of the emergency procedures if the need may arise. Individual expectations and concerns. There are human concerns in terms of ego, emotions, and achievements which we all should be aware of and consider while working as a team. What defines a successful outcome? The successful completion of the maintenance operation has to be clearly defined in terms of ground run, check test flight, and the parameters to be achieved. Debriefing arrangements. Debriefing is essential for discussing the learnings during the completion of the task, to improvise the procedure and mitigate the bottlenecks. Team dismissal arrangements. The team members may often disperse after completion of the task. However, there has to be a mechanism to retain the knowledge gained during the task or project. Opportunities for the questions and clarifications. Concerns of all team members have to be addressed in positive manner. Fatigue. Fatigue is a common phenomenon in aviation mechanics, as most of them work 10 to 12 hours a day. It reduces the capacity of the human being to work efficiently. Fatigue is natural physiological reaction to prolonged physical and or mental stress which affects the ability to concentrate, remember and make decisions. Fatigue often leads to distraction and loss of situational awareness. Types of fatigue. Acute fatigue, caused due to prolonged hours and insufficient sleep. Operational fatigue. The body and brain gets fatigued due to the prolonged task performance requiring hand-eye coordination. Chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue is the combination of mental stress and physiological condition such as amnesia and has long-lasting effects on the body. Symptoms of fatigue. Reduced attention, diminished memory. Mood becomes withdrawn, low situational awareness, high intensity stress. The study about fatigue takes us to the understanding the important schedule of the human body called circadian rhythm. The human body is in the best times to work from 9 am to 5 pm and requires deep sleep from 1 am to 4 am. We should avoid any maintenance related activities during this time as the reflexes of the body and ability to think is drastically affected during this time. Fatigue safety nets. Be aware of the signs and symptoms of fatigue and look for them in yourself and others. Fatigue self-management, adequate sleep, healthy diet, reduced use of alcohol, and exercise are the best ways to cope up with stress. Work of critical nature should not be planned during the low point on body's circadian rhythm, that is 3 am to 5 am. Ask others to check your work. It is possible that we may miss some steps or complete the task improperly due to fatigue. It's always advisable to get your work checked by the fellow technician or supervisor. Lack of resources. We, as maintainers, often face lack of resources in terms of spares, time, tools, manpowers, and ground support equipment, to name a few. Availability of the parts is important as it builds additional pressure on technicians. The lack of resources often lead to usage of inappropriate tools and spares in the name of finding the way out or creativity, which is incorrect of course. We have to be sure about the quality of the resources available at our disposals, including the support. Lack of resources safety nets. Check suspect areas at the beginning of the inspection and AOG the required parts. Prepare the list of mandatory spares well before the scheduled inspection and demand them in time to avoid delays and thereby undue pressure. Order and stock the anticipated parts before they are required. Know all available part resources and arrange for loaning or pooling. Maintain a standard and if in doubt, ground the aircraft. Pressure. Certain pressure is required for efficient task execution. However, too much of pressure can lead humans to make errors. One perpetual pressure in aviation is to produce. This may lead the maintainer to cut the corners and take steps which are dangerous. Completing the work despite of lack of resources. Signing without completing the work. Pressure to complete work. Pressure to go home are also the fallout of pressure. Pressure is to be expected when working in a dynamic environment. Pressure to meet deadlines interferes with our ability to complete tasks correctly. The pressure to produce in time with the paucity of resources leads to the old argument, quantity versus quality. Pressure can be created by lack of resources, especially time. The most common resources of pressure is ourselves. We as technicians have an inherent tendency to complete the job despite of all challenges and get the aircraft online. Pressure, safety nets. Be sure that pressure is not self-induced. Don't build up the pressure on yourself. That it's incumbent on you to get the aircraft serviceable. If it's not feasible within available resources and time, communicate your concern. Bring out limitations which are stressing you to meet the deadline and quality of the work. Ask for extra help. Raise the alarm for extra resources for task completion well within the time to avoid building up stress. Be assertive or learn how to say no or stop. Learn to draw a line and never cross it in case of the flight safety and maintenance safety. Lack of assertiveness. Assertiveness is a communication and behavioral style that allows us to express feelings, opinions, concerns, beliefs, and needs in a positive and productive manner, not to be confused with aggression. The graph of aggression versus performance depicts that right amount of aggression, which is termed as assertion, is required to meet the objectives of both parties. However, too much of concern for others' right often leads to compromises and in turn into errors, followed by mishaps. On the other hand, too much of aggression leads to arguments and hampers the task, besides affecting human relations and organization environment. Unassertive team members can be forced to go with the majority decision, even when they believe that it's wrong and dangerous to do so. We can see that in one of the incidents in the United States. A seaplane, whilst undergoing the scheduled maintenance, was not complied with the mandatory rudder cable replacement. The lack of assertion to raise the concern and refusal to ground the aircraft if cable was not replaced led to the subsequent accident, leading to 3 fatalities. Lack of assertiveness safety nets. If it's not critical, record it or bring it to the notice of the officer and discuss about it proactively. Discuss the matter which concern you and you think can harm the safety in any ways. Criticism should be directed at actions and their consequences rather than people and their personalities. Be objective in the criticism and avoid relating it with the personalities and individuals. Refuse to compromise your standards. Quality of the work is the hallmark of a hardened aviation technician, and one should not lower it at any cost. Stress. Stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension, is a blessing and a curse. It motivates us to perform. The graph of the level of stress versus performance depicts that moderate stress is required to get the job done in prescribed manner and quality. However, too much and too less stress leads to fixation and complacency respectively, causing humans to make errors. Typically, in the aviation environment, there are two distinct types of stress: acute and chronic. Signs of stress: changes in personality and moods, errors of judgment, lack of concentration, and poor memory. Channels of communication: it is essential to communicate about the stresses which are troubling the individual, and if required, professional help be sought as well. Stress management: social interaction, sleep, diet, and exercise are the common stress relievers. Stress safety nets. Beware how stress can affect your work. Stress affects the decision making capability of a person and may lead to hasty and irrational decisions. Stop and look at the problem rationally. We often look at the problem in isolation and as an impediment and stop thinking about it rationally. Every problem has a solution. We need to look for the solutions rather than getting worked about it. Determine the rational course of action and follow it to get it resolved. Take time off or at least have a short break. Sometimes taking a break from the routine is a great stress reliever and should be practiced to calm our minds. Discuss it with someone or ask for the professional help in case of chronic stress. Ask fellow technicians to monitor your work if you are feeling stressed. Exercise regularly. Physical activity helps in reducing the stress. The common saying, healthy mind stays in healthy body, works great to reduce the stress. Lack of awareness. Lack of awareness is because of one or more human factors and actions, such as fatigue, distraction, or lack of communication. Consider the crew making a simple mistake caused by lack of awareness, wherein they just followed the generic guideline mentioned in air publication, installed where it is easily accessible, and fitted exactly on the bulkhead located in front of passenger chair. Whilst braking on the landing roll, a passenger was injured. Lack of awareness often leads to failure to recognize the situation, understand what it is, and predict the possible results. Tunnel vision. Working in isolation and considering one's own responsibilities. One has to be aware of the consequences of the work he is undertaking and how it is affecting the follow-on or parallel maintenance activities. Building experience with time and understanding one's place in spectrum of operations. Developing foresight and understanding how one's work affects the other's actions. Attitude of professionalism. Constant questioning. Why? Lack of awareness, safety nets. Think what may occur in case of an accident. Critical thinking about the consequences of the improper completion of the task. Check to see if your work will conflict with existing modification or repair. Ask others if they can see problem with the work done. Having third person's view often helps in finding problems which we fail to notice while working. Vigilance. Situational awareness is the subset of vigilant mind and critical thinking. Setting up the right workplace procedures, scanning, two-way communication, and use of checklists. Workplace practices developed over time through experience and often under influence of a specific workplace culture can be good, bad, safe or unsafe. The way we do things around here, unwritten rules or behavior, which deviate from required rules, procedures, and instructions. May 25, 1979, an American airline DC-90 crashed post-takeoff after losing left engine. Investigations revealed improper maintenance procedure was to be blamed, as the engine was dislodged from the pylon due to incorrect fitment procedure. The crew used forklift to lift or rest the engine while it's being fitted. The forklift ran out of fuel during the procedure, putting stress onto pylon bolt and receptacle hinge, leading to the development of a crack which later propagated and caused the mishap, leading to 271 fatalities including crew. Enforced through peer pressure and force of habit. It is important to foster the culture of constructive criticism and norms to follow the right maintenance procedures, not designed to meet all the circumstances and threats. Norms, safety nets. Always work as per maintenance procedures or have the instructions changed. It might happen that the prescribed procedure may be lengthy and requires workaround. Instead, the crew locally develops the alternative method, which is easy but not as per the book. In this case, the crew has to get the developed method either established or follow the servicing instructions in totality. Beware that norms don't make the things right. It takes the courage to stand against the group and point out that norms don't make the procedure right. The little pain taken today will certainly save the lives and material in the times to come. To sum it up, The Dirty Dozen is a catchy title, but these are not only the 12 issues faced by the maintainers, but it is to instigate the discussion on the human aspects and establish checks and balances to mitigate the accidents or incidents. There are other factors such as anger, pride, fear, drugs, and alcohol. Errors are the part of life, but we have to get them reduced to the level wherein their effect is not significant. The reality is that aviation is a complex and challenging field, wherein the smallest of the mistake can lead to serious damage to life and property. We thank you for watching the video. I hope it has helped you in your professional work. Please subscribe for more such informative videos.